Welcome to our next video, writing systems of equations. When a system of linear equations represents a real-world problem, each equation represents a constraint or condition of the problem. The solution represents the value of the variables where both constraints of the situation are met. For the problem given below, identify what each variable represents and write in words what each equation represents. So, with that being said, number 1, Reggie's parents require him to do a total of 16 chores a month. His chores include sweeping the floors and cleaning the bathrooms. His parents pay him $2 each time he sweeps the floors and $4 each time he cleans the bathrooms. This month, Reggie earned a total of $52. So what they did was they took all of those words and they switched them into something that we understand a little bit better, which are equations. Now, with that being said, we kind of need to know what the equations are talking about. So this first one says, what constraint is represented by x plus y equals 16? Well, if you don't really know what x and y are, you might be a little confused as to what the sentence is trying to say. So let's go down here to this variables section and let's go ahead and identify those. So with systems, you can actually give your variables titles. X, if you look at the problem, says that his chores include sweeping the floors and cleaning the bathrooms. So because we're talking about chores, that is what I would identify my variables as being. That X is the sweeping and Y is the bathrooms. Perfect. Now with that, because I have an understanding of what x and y both mean now, I might be able to answer this question. This is what constraint is represented by x plus y equals 16. Well, because I know that x is sweeping plus bathrooms equals 16, I'm really trying to figure out what this 16 represents now. So let's go back up to the problem. Reggie's parents require him to do a total of 16 chores a month. That's where it is. The 16 represents the amount of chores Reggie has to do in a month. So this first constraint is somehow referring to the total amount of chores in a month. So that would be the first constraint. Now the reason for the second one is because not only is he having to do chores, he's also getting paid for them. So your second equation is 2x plus 4y equals 52. Let's go down here and see if we can figure out what that is, because now my variables have coefficients. Let's figure out what the 2 is. It says his parents pay him $2 each time he sweeps. Oh, $2 each time he sweeps. Sweeping is x, there's the 2x. Now he gets paid $4 each time he cleans the bathroom. 4 is attached to y, which represents bathrooms. So that entire equation is trying to say that this is the amount of money earned by doing chores. And then to round that off, it says equals 52. Well, if I go look back up, it says this month Reggie earned a total of 52. So they do kind of give you little keywords that lets you know what each one's going to be equal to, and that is the words total, and then it tells you a total of. So now moving on to example 2. Evan's mom drops him off at the entertainment zone for 3 hours and buys him 11 tickets. Evan can spend his tickets driving go-karts or playing mini golf, which each cost 1 ticket. Driving the go-kart track takes 10 minutes and a game of mini golf lasts 45 minutes. How many of each activity can Evan participate in before his mom comes back to pick him up? So with this, again, go ahead and define your variables so that way you know what you're working with here. So it looks like he gets dropped off. It looks like he's got hours, and it looks like he's got tickets. But what are all of those things for? The tickets, the amount of time, how do they all tie together? Like, what is the common thing all of these things have? And that would be the go-karts and the mini golf. So that's what we're going to write down here. X is your go-karts, and Y is your mini golf. Perfect. Now, we could go ahead and describe the constraints if we wanted to, but I personally recommend, like up here they started you with the system, go ahead and start yourself with the system as well. What do we know about go-karts and mini golf? Well, I know that they each cost 1 ticket. So with that being said, I know that they can be X, which is 1 because there's a singular X, plus Y, a singular Y, because again, they cost 1 ticket. But did it tell me a total amount of tickets? Let's go back to the top sentence. Evan's mom drops him off at the entertainment zone for 3 hours and buys him, there it is, 11 tickets. So that is my first constraint, that each one of these costs 1 ticket, and together I have 11 tickets to spend. So what that means in terms of constraints is that he can play 11 games. Perfect. Now let's talk about the other part of this, the second equation we have to write. Evan can spend his tickets driving go-karts or playing mini golf, which each costs 1 ticket. Perfect. We already took care of that one. Driving the go-karts, I'm going to highlight those words every time I see them because maybe something goes along with it. Takes 10 minutes. And a game of mini golf lasts 45 minutes. How many of each activity can Evan participate in before his mom comes back to get him? So now the second one must be talking about the amount of time because it wants to know how many things he can do before his mom comes back to pick him up. And then it even goes in to say how much time is spent on each different activity. So X being our go-karts, he can be with go-karts for 10 minutes. So how we would write that is 10x, 10 minutes per every go-kart, plus he can spend on mini golf 45 minutes. So again, 45, and because we're on mini golf, y equals. Now we've needed to figure out the total amount of time that he has. And if you remember, it says that she dropped him off for 3 hours. Now, unfortunately, I'm not able to put the number 3 right there because I have a roadblock. This says 10 minutes, this says 45 minutes, and this says 3 hours. So they did kind of try to trick me there, and hopefully they didn't trick you. 3 hours is actually 180 minutes, and you can just multiply 3 by 60 and you will get 180. So 180 is actually the number that I have to write down because these are in terms of minutes, and it says 10 minutes and 45 minutes to prove that. So you still want to make sure that everything is in the correct form and they're all the same. You want them all the same units, probably what I should have said. So now we can describe the other constraint, which is the total amount of time that he has, and he has 180 minutes or 3 hours to play. Perfect. Alrighty, so now going on to the other side, we are going to skip number 3 and go straight into number 4. River Racing is a company that provides inner tubes for children and adults to float the river. The child tube has a diameter of 2.5 feet, and the adult tube has a diameter of 3 feet. River Racing owns a total of 160 tubes, and the total diameter of all the tubes is 430. Write a system to determine the number of child tubes C and number of adult tubes A that River Racing owns. Whoa, a whole bunch of words just for them to tell me to write a system. So with that, I do want you to go ahead and identify your variables. I would always recommend that first because you've got to know what they're wanting you to use. And this one was actually nice. It identified them for you. The number of child tubes C and the number of adult tubes A. So personally, what I would write down, so that way I knew exactly what I was talking about, is that C equals child tubes and that A equals adult tubes. Kind of gives you a starting point so that way you go, oh, I'm talking about the tubes of the children and the tubes of the adults. So now what I want you to do is pause the video and I want you to attempt to write the system on your own. Okay, welcome back. I went ahead and wrote the system without you, so hopefully now yours matches mine. So C plus A equals 160, 2.5C plus 3A equals 430. Now I am going to discuss where I got that information. So it does say that there are a total of 160 tubes. Now, where I got equals 160 is from that total of right here. And then I had to think what added together to give me 160. And the only thing that added together to equal 160 is the amount of children's tubes and the amount of adult tubes. So that is where the first one came from. And then the second one applied to the actual size of all the tubes, because notice it says all the tubes is 430 feet. So I know I'm looking at something pertaining to feet. And here it says the child tube, diameter of 2.5 feet, which is why 2.5 is now the coefficient of C. And the adult tube has a diameter of 3 feet, adult tube, which is now why A has the coefficient of 3. So again, writing these systems is not meant to be difficult. It's seriously you taking a really large word problem and converting it down as simple as possible so you're not having to deal with so many words. So now number 5, Annette has math and science tests this week. She sets aside 275 minutes each day for study time. She determines that she needs to study for science 10 minutes less than twice the amount of time she studies for her math test. Circle the name of the student who correctly wrote the system of equations to find the number of minutes Annette needs to study for her math test X and her science test Y. So this is more what your types of problems are going to look like. So I want you to stop the video, attempt this question without me. Welcome back. So I do want to point attention to all of them have this top equation here. So that equation is not what's going to mess me up. Something else is going to mess me up. So let's look into this next one. We did have her math test as being X and her science test as being Y. So the second one here says X equals 2 times Y plus 10. Let's go read those constraints again. She determines she needs to study for science 10 minutes less than twice. That's a mouthful. 10 minutes less than twice the amount she studies for her math test. So we are multiplying by 2 because it says twice right there, but then it says less than. I believe that they have more than here because they have an addition sign, which would automatically mark that one wrong. I cannot have an addition sign because it says less than. Oh, so sorry about that. I had to pause the video. Back to what I was saying, I have to subtract because it says less than. Now, if it had said more than, I would have been able to choose that, but of course it says less, so I'm not able to. So I know for sure I'm subtracting by 10. Now I need to decide here which one is set up in the right direction. So it says that she needs to study for her math test X and her science test Y. So back here it says that 10 minutes less than twice the amount she studies for her math test. So I'm trying to decide how much she needs to study for her science test. Her science test is represented by Y, and it looks like the 10 minutes less than twice the amount of time she studies for math. So one of these equations has the variables mixed. One of the equations says that 2 times the science amount gives me science. The other one says that 2 times the math amount gives me science. So this is where it gets kind of tricky because you're looking at variables and trying to tie them back to words. Please don't forget that you are always encouraged to write down what each one of these means. X is your math test. Y is your science test. You're needing to know about how many minutes for science. So with that being said, the only person who set it up correctly in solving for science was DeAndre. DeAndre has Y isolated, meaning that by plugging in a value for X, you will be able to find your amount of minutes for science. And the other way to determine that is you do have 10 minutes less, which we obviously took care of with the minus 10. Then twice, meaning multiply by 2, the amount of time she studies for math. So what that means is that 2 needs to be multiplied by the variable used for math, which is X. So now we're going to move on to number 7. Now number 7, I'm just going to read and I want you to attempt on your own. Bustin's Barbecue Pit sells sausage and brisket by the pound. Rusty orders 2 pounds of sausage and 3 pounds of brisket for his family and pays $21. Marta orders 10 pounds of sausage and 14 pounds of brisket and pays $100.50. Find the cost per pound of sausage for S and brisket B. So in class we discussed how we wanted to solve systems. I got from y'all that y'all would rather me use elimination, so that's what I'm going to use when it gets to the solving part. So on this one you have a few things you have to do. You're going to have to write the system first and then solve. So go ahead and pause the video and come back when you think you have the system written. Perfect. Okay, now let's talk about where these came from. So it did tell me down here what my variables are. It says that the cost of sausage was S and that the brisket was B. But notice I don't just have S plus B equals 21. Let's talk about it. So they are selling sausage and brisket, but it says that Rusty orders 2 pounds of sausage and 3 pounds of brisket and pays $21. I wouldn't be able to say S plus B equals 21 because that would be implying 1 pound of sausage and 1 pound of brisket, which is not true. It is 2 pounds of sausage, 3 pounds of brisket for $21. So they are allowed to change their constraints if they want to. It doesn't always have to be S plus B or X plus Y. Those can have coefficients as well. Now the next one says that Marta orders 10 pounds of sausage. Oops, sorry, I dropped my lid. 10 pounds of sausage and 14 pounds of brisket, which is where my second one came from, with her total $100.50. So now that we've correctly written the system, we now can solve it. Because y'all like elimination the most, I'm going to do elimination, and with that I need to create a zero pair. Where I see the easiest to create a zero pair amongst my variables is with 2 and 10, because I can easily turn that to a negative 10. Don't forget, zero pair means opposites of one another. So now I'm going to rewrite my system, and it is going to be negative 10s minus 15b equals negative 105. Perfect. And I did not have to manipulate the bottom one. I only had to manipulate the top one. So I'm just going to rewrite it as is. And now I've set up a system that I'm able to solve. So I'm going to go ahead and pause the video because I think I've put you through enough on the solving that I feel like y'all should be able to do this part. Perfect. So now you should have gotten that the brisket equals $4.50 and the sausage equals $3.75. What you've done is you've identified your system of linear equations and then set it up with the elimination to solve for your brisket and your sausage. If you need further explanation on how I received these two answers, just leave me a comment and I can also make an additional video going through the solving of just this. But hopefully we're at the point now where we feel a little bit more comfortable with solving these, especially now that we're using a method that we all like. Alrighty, I hope this video helps. Please send me an email or leave me a comment if you need additional help. Bye!